The motorcycle's engine cut through the summer air as Mila Björklund tightened her grip around her boyfriend's waist. June 4th, 1960. The date would become seared into Finland's collective memory, though Mila couldn't know that yet. She was just 15, about to turn 16, and all she could think about was the glittering lake waiting 18 miles ahead. When Niels Gustafsson finally parked his motorcycle at the forest's edge, Mila climbed off and felt her breath catch. The lake stretched before them like liquid glass, wrapped in endless pine and birch. Families dotted the shoreline. Children's laughter carried across the water. It looked like paradise. "Perfect, isn't it?" Nils said, that crooked smile spreading across his face, the one that made Mila's stomach flip. But before she could answer, another motorcycle roared up behind them. Seppo, Nils's best friend, locked his brakes hard, swinging the back wheel in a theatrical arc. Mila couldn't help herself. She burst out laughing. That's when she caught it. Just for a second. The way Niels's jaw tightened, the flash of something dark behind his eyes as he watched her laugh at Seppo's antics. But then it was gone, replaced so quickly by his usual grin that Mila wondered if she'd imagined it. "You're being paranoid," she told herself. "He's not jealous. Everything's fine." The four teenagers, Mila, Niels, Seppo, and Seppo's girlfriend Anya, headed toward the small wooden kiosk near the water's edge. They needed supplies. Beer, soda, snacks for their overnight celebration. Behind the kiosk stood a modest house, its front railing lined with empty beer bottles catching the afternoon sun like a warning no one knew how to read. The woman manning the kiosk had her back to them. She didn't turn around. "Excuse me?" Mila called out. "We'd like to buy." The woman whipped around, her face twisted with immediate hostility. "What do you want?" Mila stammered an apology, though she had no idea what she was apologizing for. Behind her, Seppo and Anya were struggling not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. The woman slammed their drinks onto the counter with unnecessary force, each movement radiating contempt. As Niels paid, the woman's demeanor suddenly shifted. "You camping by the lake?" Mila forced a polite smile. "Yes, just for the night. Then pitch your tent as far from here as possible." The woman's voice had gone cold, dead. "My husband and I are sick of wild teenagers causing trouble. You understand me? Stay away." The teenagers hurried off, the boys laughing nervously, but Mila felt ice in her stomach, something about that woman's eyes. By the time they reached their campsite, a secluded spot where land jutted into the lake, hidden among dense birch trees, Mila had shaken off her unease. The spot was perfect, private but not isolated. The view of the water was breathtaking. The boys quickly erected their canvas tent between two birch trees while the girls organized their supplies. Soon, beers were opened, stories were swapped, and the strange encounter at the kiosk faded into just another funny anecdote. They swam as the evening stretched on. In Finland's summer, the sun never fully sets during these white nights. It just hovers at the horizon, bathing everything in an otherworldly glow. Lying on the dock afterward, Mila felt profoundly happy. Nils's hand found hers. The water lapped gently at the shore. "This is perfect," she whispered. Later that night, Mila would write in her diary about how wonderful everything was, how much she was enjoying her early birthday celebration, how lucky she felt to have Niels, to have these friends, to be here at this beautiful lake. She had no way of knowing those would be the last words she would ever write. All four teenagers eventually piled into their single tent, tired and content. The white night glowed softly through the canvas. One by one, they drifted into sleep. Mila woke suddenly. Her eyes snapped open in the darkness, or what passed for darkness during white night. She wasn't sure what had pulled her from sleep, but her heart was already racing. Then she heard it. Rustling. Movement outside the tent. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake the others. Had someone gotten up? She looked around the tent's dim interior, trying to count bodies in the shadows. Before she could be certain, something moved outside. A figure. A dark, shapeless silhouette that suddenly blocked the tent's opening, cutting off the pale light from outside. The figure leaned forward, peering into the tent. Mila's breath stopped in her throat. The eyes. 2 points of bright, glowing red, staring directly at her. She tried to scream, tried to move, tried to wake the others. Then came a snapping sound, sharp and final. The tent collapsed on top of them. The next next morning at precisely 6 a.m., two young boys fishing near the lake noticed a blond man running from the direction of the campsite. They thought nothing of it. Just some guy out for an early morning jog, maybe. Hours later, as the sun climbed higher, a father and his two sons decided to walk out to the dock where the teenagers had camped. As they approached the clearing, the father spotted something strange between the birch trees. A crumpled heap of canvas. He moved closer. Then he saw the blood. "Don't come any closer," he shouted to his sons, his voice cracking with panic. "Go back! Go back now!" When police arrived before noon, they found a scene of unimaginable brutality. Anya and Seppo had been stabbed and beaten to death through the canvas of the tent. They likely never woke up. Mila had made it outside somehow, but not far. Her body lay draped across the collapsed tent, broken bones visible beneath her skin, 15 stab wounds marking her torso, some delivered while she still lived, others after. And Niels, God, Niels. His face was so completely destroyed by blunt force trauma that he was barely recognizable as human. As officers began documenting the scene, one knelt near Niels's body to examine his injuries more closely. Then they heard it. A gasp. Wet and labored. Niels's eyes flickered open. "He's alive," the officer screamed. "Get a medic now!" The crime scene made no sense. Some valuable items were missing, wallets, watches, suggesting robbery. But then other items were missing that had no monetary value at all. Both motorcycles were gone. Niels's leather jacket, his shoes. Who murders 4 teenagers for a used leather jacket? The military was called in to search the vast forest. 500 meters from the campsite, they found Niels's shoes hidden under a pile of leaves. The shoes were covered in blood. The killer had worn them while fleeing, then discarded them. When Niels finally recovered enough to speak, his face permanently disfigured by metal plates and pins, he had almost no memory of that night. The trauma had wiped it clean, almost. "I remember one thing," he told police, his reconstructed jaw barely moving. "A dark figure, standing over us, with red eyes, glowing red eyes." The police had one potential lead: those 2 boys who'd seen a blond man running from the campsite at dawn. A composite sketch was created and circulated, but the sketch led nowhere. Everyone around Lake Bodom had a theory, and most of those theories pointed to the same man, Carl Valdemar Gillstrom. Carl lived in that house behind the kiosk, the house with all the empty beer bottles. He was known as a violent drunk with an explosive temper. He'd been discharged from military service after allegedly drowning a kitten. His own wife, the hostile woman who'd confronted the teenagers, had reportedly gone to police multiple times claiming Carl had assaulted her. People in the area were certain this was Carl's doing. This was exactly the kind of senseless violence he was capable of. But when police tried to question him, they spoke instead to his wife, and she told them Carl had been home with her and their children all night. She was his alibi. The police believed her. Carl was never seriously investigated. The case went cold. 9 years later, 9 years during which the Lake Bodom murders became Finland's most infamous unsolved crime, Carl was sharing drinks with his neighbor on a warm summer evening. They'd had quite a bit to drink. The conversation had grown loose and rambling. Then, out of nowhere, Carl leaned over and said something that made his neighbor's blood run cold. "Don't you understand? I'm the murderer of Bodom." The neighbor stared at him, uncertain whether this was a sick joke or something far worse. "If that's true," the neighbor finally said, voice shaking, "then you should go drown yourself in that lake." The next morning, Carl's body was found floating in Lake Bodom, right near where the teenagers had died 9 years earlier. Police could never determine if his death was accidental, suicide, or if someone had helped him fulfill his neighbor's suggestion. The official cause of death remained drowning. But in the community around Lake Bodom, most people believed they finally knew the truth. Carl had been so racked with guilt, so tormented by what he'd done to those innocent teenagers, that he'd done the only thing his conscience would allow. He drowned himself in the same waters where he'd stolen 4 young lives on that terrible white night in 1960. To this day, the Lake Bodom murders remain officially unsolved. In 2004, 44 years after the killings, Finnish authorities made a shocking decision. They charged Nils Gustafsson, the sole survivor, with the murders of his friends. The prosecution's theory? that Nils had committed the murders himself in a jealous rage after seeing Mila laugh at Seppo's jokes. That his own severe injuries were either self-inflicted to cover his crimes or the result of a fight with Seppo. The trial captivated Finland, but in 2005 Nils was acquitted of all charges due to lack of evidence. Carl Gillström was never officially connected to the crimes. The red-eyed figure was never identified. The truth died in those dark waters, taking its secrets down to the depths where they remain, cold and undisturbed, waiting. Some say if you visit Lake Bodom on a white night in summer, when the sun never quite sets and shadows grow strange and elongated, you can still feel the presence of something malevolent among those birch trees. Something that watches. Something with glowing red eyes. 4 teenagers went camping to celebrate a birthday. Only one came back, and he can't remember what happened. The Lake Bodom murders remain one of Finland's most notorious unsolved cases. Various theories continue to circulate, but the true identity of the killer may never be known.